About 1 year ago, I made a huge mistake, and at the moment, I'm trying to dig myself out of it, and I mean that literally. Literally dig myself out of it. If you want to know what I'm talking about, stick around.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now winning, better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything.
Hey everybody, this is Praxis, and behind me are our chickens. They're just coming up on being a year old. This is our first year owning chickens, and I've learned a lot in that time period. And right now what I'm working on is a second kind of revised version of their coop. What they're in right now is their outdoor run area, and we had their coop on the inside of this greenhouse over here. I'm going to bring you in there and kind of show you what we've got going on in there at the moment, and then I'm going to show you what we're building as a replacement for it, and we're going to talk a little bit about why I'm doing the replacement and what are some of the things that I'm hoping to achieve. So first, let's hop inside and see what their coop presently is like. So this is our eastern greenhouse, and the reason that we decided to put the chickens here initially, well, there were quite a few reasons. One of them, though, is because coming up on the winter, I figured that this would be an area that would be warmer than outside. I wanted them to be, not freezing to death. It's our first year having them, so I wanted to have an environment that would be, a little bit more hospitable for them. And there is their coop. It is completely covered in plywood as best as I could. It did not start that way when we initially built the coop. It was just all surrounded with this chicken wire. But right over here, you can see this piece of foam paneling up there. It's 2-inch foam, and what that's covering is my window, my bedroom window. Every morning, 3 times, starting at 4:30, then 5:30, and then again at 6:30, the roosters in our flock would start screaming. Everybody knows that roosters crow at sunup, and I anticipated that would be the case with ours. I just didn't understand that they crow 2 hours before sunup and 1 hour before sunup and right at sunup, and they don't just crow once, they crow for like 10 minutes straight. So it's been pretty awful, to be honest. At the beginning, it was really loud. Then we put all this plywood up as kind of a sound deadening barrier, and I put up the foam over the window. I still have to have a pillow right next to me that I use as my earmuff pillow, that when I get woken up by them every single morning, I put that earmuff pillow on, and it kind of helps me to get back to sleep, so they can wake me up again in about an hour. This is the inside of their coop. So that's one reason why we want to move the coop. It's awful for me. We've got their water, and we've got their food right over here. We have the device that opens and closes their window, their door to get in and out. It's made by Brinsea. I feel like that company does a pretty good job with their products. And that opens it up at certain times of the day. It also has a light illumination setting, but I've not been using the light illumination setting because it's too dark in here. As you can see by the fact that we can barely see these 2 nesting boxes. I just installed these nesting boxes today. Prior to that, I just had kind of a plastic tub that they were using, and I ordered these new nesting boxes for their new coop, and since I had them, I figured I'd stick them in here and let them start using them, and they have started using them. Actually, this girl right here, the black one, we called Crow, she was the first one to use one of the nesting boxes. And were you pleased? Did it meet your specifications? Well, there you go. All right, so this has been their coop, and there's the lock for it right there. This has been their coop for just about a year, almost a year that we've had them here. The pros of it is that it kept them warm in the winter because it was kind of a enclosed environment. The con is that they were really loud. Another con is that coop just isn't big enough for them. We have 4 hens and 2 roosters. One of the roosters is a little bantam, and the two roosters have gotten on okay with each other. Now they're starting to get on each other's nerves. And I think part of that is just that they're all crammed up into such a small space. So we want a space that is not going to wake me up in the morning, a space that's not in the greenhouse because they're messy. There's dust all over the greenhouse. We would never be able to use that greenhouse for anything other than a chicken coop, as long as they're in there, because they just create so much mess and dust in there. And also we want to give them some more space. Additionally, this is kind of their outdoor run, their protected run, and I want to get a little bit of a larger space for them. This one is 8 foot by 8 foot, and we want a much larger outdoor space. So this is what we're working on now. This is going to be the kind of revised version of what we have in there. I'm not exactly sure of the square footage of what was in there. I'm going to say it's somewhere around like 4 feet by maybe 6 feet, something like that. And what we've got here going on is a foundation hole for a partially bermed in greenhouse, which is going to be 12 feet by 8 feet. It's going to be 8 feet across here and 12 feet deep. I'm just going to set the camera down and I will kind of walk you through a little bit of what we've got going on in this space. All right, so coming into this space, the corner is going to be right around here, and there'll be a wall here with a door. We'll be able to enter from this side. I have a lot of old windows that I just adopted from people that were getting rid of windows. So we're going to have lots of windows around the sides to let some light in. That's allegedly good for egg-laying hens. If they are in the winter, a lot of times people will say that their hens aren't laying eggs very much, and we never suffered from that ourselves. They laid straight through the winter. All the hens were laying pretty much one egg a day. Pretty much one egg a day. We have 4 hens, and we would always get at least 3, if not 4 eggs a day. So, like, you know, occasionally one of the 4 wouldn't lay, but you know, we were usually getting 1 egg from each of them. So I think part of that is because it was nice and bright in their area. You know, we would bring them out, they'd have the outdoor area to be in and everything, so we tried to get light in for them. So there's going to be a lot of windows around here. 8 feet across the front, door right here, 12 feet back. There's going to be an exit somewhere around here that they'll be able to get up to, and then that is going to be their outdoor run area. And I'm berming it into the ground for a couple of reasons. One, I just think it looks cool to berm things into the ground. It makes it so they don't take up as much room. They're not just like these thumbs sticking up out of the landscape, kind of integrated into it. Additionally, when you bury things down into the ground, you're benefiting from some of that geothermal heat. You know, you get shelter and kind of insulation being down under the ground. So the fact that this side is going to be 4 feet down under the ground, and this side is going to be kind of like the walkout basement sort of side of it, it's going to add a lot of insulation on that side of it. The other benefit that we're going to get is that we have had an issue with radon in our house, and we mitigated it right away. We have an radon blower vent that is blowing radon outside, and that grabs all of the gas from underneath our slab. That takes air from the house, brings it down underneath the slab of our house through some gravel that was put there, you know, in the case that we would need to do radon mitigation. Although ironically, the gravel itself is an incredibly intense source of radon, because a lot of it's granite, and granite can have uranium in it, and the uranium is emitting the radon. So it was kind of ironic that the people brought in gravel that had radon in case we had too much radon. So I don't know, maybe if we didn't put the gravel down there, we wouldn't have had the radon problem. But in any event, we are venting radon out. And because it is under the ground, remember I mentioned the air down, or the temperature down under the ground is, you know, it's going to be warmer in the wintertime. It usually hovers around 50 degrees. So it's cool in the summer and it's warm in the winter down there. So the radon that gets blown out of our house is, you know, it's somewhere around 50 degrees, that air coming out of the house mixed with radon. And that just blows out of the back of our house over here. What I was thinking is that instead of just wasting that stuff and blowing it outside, why not cut a trench and have that radon gas, you know, which is, you know, it's not mostly radon gas, it's mostly air, you know, atmospheric air mixed with radon gas. Have that blow into here. Now, what's the problem with radon gas in people is that if you're breathing it over an extended period of time, it steadily increases your chance of getting lung cancer. If you're breathing it at a certain level for like your entire life, you got like, say, like a 10% greater chance of getting lung cancer. Well, that is the case for people, but chickens don't live anywhere near as long as people do. So my thinking is that I should be able to vent the radon, and again, it's not pure radon, it's just there's some radon mixed in with atmospheric air. I should be able to vent that atmospheric air mixed with a little bit of radon into the chicken coop area. It'll keep it warm in the winter, it'll keep it cool in the summer, and I presume that chickens don't live long enough to actually ever get lung cancer from that. Now, if I am wrong about that and I learn later that is not the case, I can still benefit from it, because instead of just venting the air raw in here, what I could do is I could vent the air in here and blow it through like a manifold of pipes, and the pipes will act kind of like a radiator, and it will emit its heat into the space, and then I can continue the pipe, bring it all back together and then blow it out of the out of the chicken coop. So I can still benefit from the heat of it if I find out that for some reason, oh, that was a terrible idea, you're gonna kill your chickens, or you're gonna make your eggs radioactive or something like that. If I find out later it was a bad idea, I'm not blocking myself into it. But I think it's an interesting idea because it's gonna keep them warmer in the winter, cooler in the summer, and cool in the summer is a really big one. It's hard for chickens when it gets really hot. Today it's the middle of April, and as is typical up here in New England, it's almost 90 degrees. I'm kidding, it is almost 90 degrees here. That's completely not typical for New England. It's just one of these changes that we've been seeing every single year. I mean, there's literally a pile of snow right over here behind the house, and it's 90 degrees out. But that's really difficult for chickens. They're always venting, like kind of panting like dogs. They have a lot of trouble with heat. I have bought kind of a mister system that I'm gonna set up over here that'll mist some water that I think might help them. But also, if they have a refuge to come into their coop and they can be in here, and it's going to be like close to 50 degrees in the summertime, that's like air conditioning, and that's going to be pretty posh for all these chickens. So that is the plan of what I've got going on right now. I did the major digging with the tractor that we have. The tractor has a plow on the front, and I did most of the scooping out with that. And now I'm doing the rest of it with the shovel and the pickaxe. I'm going to show you a couple little details of how that's going. One of these is actually a new technique that I haven't myself used before. Here are the corners. One of the corners, there's always a boulder somewhere here in New England. So this is one of the corners. I drilled a hole through it with my impact driver, and I just put loosely, well, it was kind of loose, I don't know, I'm sure I can get that out. That's just a 10-inch nail, and it's just a marker for one of the corners. And I got some string on it that I was using to begin measuring this thing out. And what we got along here are all these stakes. And what I'm doing with these stakes, I'm using them to try to get the elevation. Is you can see the tips of all these little stakes, that they all crisscross each other and eclipse each other at just the same time. The reason is that they're all the same, the tops of them is all the same elevation. They're all lined up so that when you put a level across them, it's level all the way across the tops of those. And the benefit of that is that I can tell here, if I pour my footing in, I'm gonna have, that's about like 4 inches or so. And then I come over to this one, and this one, that's like 6 inches or so. So if I don't want a 6-inch thick footing, which is totally fine, I'm okay with that. But if I didn't want that, I could add some more dirt in the bottom here. Coming down over here, it's another kind of 6 inches over here. That's the other corner. That's not an elevation marker. And then we've got some more coming around this side. And I sort of like this technique of measuring the elevation. I was reading about it in a book about landscaping for doing like English gardens, where you would stick these stakes into the ground over an area, and if you wanted to make like a nice flat gravel bed or something like that, you'd drive all these stakes in and use a level to make sure that the tops of all the stakes are exactly the same height, and then you would just fill gravel up to all the stakes, and then once you have gravel all over the whole area and it's all flush with the tops of the stakes, then you know that you have a nice flat level area with the gravel, and then I guess you can just pull the stakes after that. So that's a new technique that I haven't used before, but I'm kind of liking it. What I have to do over on this side is from here, this has to dive down and make kind of a frost wall. Here in New England, you're supposed to go down about 4 or 5 feet. I always cheat, and I've never really been bitten by cheating on frost walls. I'm not going to say that I never will be, but I don't plan on going down 4 or 5 feet on this frost wall. I think, gosh, I'm probably going to go down like maybe 3 feet or so, and you know, I'm going to have insulation here, and that's what I always do. You know, they say 4 or 5 feet, but I've never done that. I mean, 4 or 5 feet. I'm just about 6 feet. That's like this deep to get below the frost line, and that's I couldn't even reach with the pickaxe there. I mean, it is what it is. If that's what's required, you know, that's what you should do. But I've never found that even here in New England, that's required to go down 4 or 5 feet to get down to the you know, below the frost line. So I'm going to do the usual kind of like 3 feet almost, maybe, you know, 3 feet and change, or 2 feet and change, or something like that. And I'll have insulation on it. And you know, I wonder if the idea is if you're venting warmth into the structure, you know, if the warmth is kind of pushing away at the frost too. You know, I'm not exactly sure why it always worked for me, but it always does seem to work for me. So this is the new thing that I'm working. This is my primary project that I want to make sure that I get done this year. It's really important because the chickens are just at each other's throats. And the other thing is with the avian influenza that is going around. If and when it gets here, I think it's more like a when thing than an if thing. If and when it gets here, let me just adjust the camera here because I don't want to have to like crouch down like a monster. If and when it gets here, it's fairly likely that it's going to kill a number of our chickens. At the moment, we have 2 roosters and 6 hens, and if like half of our flock gets killed, which those numbers seem kind of plausible based on what I've heard, if half the flock gets killed, we could easily lose like both of our roosters in an event like that. You know, the random chance would suggest that that is a perfectly you know, plausible outcome of that. So I wouldn't want to get myself into that situation where we couldn't have the flock be self-regenerating. So we want to get the flock a little bit bigger. Right now it's 6. I think we want to get it up to maybe 10 or 12 you know, birds. You know, probably not much. The hard thing with these chickens is the rooster to hen ratio. You know, what I'm seeing is somewhere around 7 hens for every 1 chicken, and you know, to make it so that the roosters, I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. 7 hens to every rooster, to make it so the roosters aren't like fighting, competing for the hens. But that's an awful lot of hens for you know, for the roosters that you got. It's an interesting species. They you know, humans quarrel, but you know, we don't got anything on chickens. Chickens just fight about nothing half the time. The hens are pretty good with each other, except when they're not. Like some of the hens, like there's one hen, she's called Rice Crackers, and she's always picking on this other hen that we call Crazy. I mean, in fact, Crazy's got all these feathers missing on her back. That's one of the reasons I feel motivated. I want to get this done because I feel like if I get more space for them, at least, you know, poor old Crazy, who's always getting picked on by Rice Crackers, she can like go off someplace and like just be in her own space. And I think having less stress in the flock will be good. And again, getting some more chickens in the flock so that it's more resilient, so that if we lose you know, some birds when the influenza comes through this area, you know, we can recover from that. And recover from that we will. The whole idea of people killing their entire flock so that they can prevent something from spreading, which, forgive me for saying this if I'm wrong, but I'm not, which has a 100% chance of becoming endemic. There's no way that this current version of avian influenza, you know, this new one that's going around, there's no way that it is not going to spread everywhere. That is an absolute given. So the idea that you would kill a flock in order to prevent its spread is idiotic, because you are killing a flock to achieve a goal which is unachievable. Am I right? So the only real approach is 2 approaches. One is that you could give billions to the pharmaceutical industry to come up with some kind of a vaccine and like try to push it that way. That would not be my suggestion on the most sensible way to go with it, but that is one way that you could make an argument for. The other way is that you let the influenza move through the flocks, like every single influenza throughout history, throughout all time, in all the past, forever, ad infinitum, back into the future. Every single other version of influenza has done this, and the susceptible birds have died, and the ones that didn't die were resilient to it, resistant to it, and were resilient because of that. and you built up the genetic strength and ability for your flock to just deal with this new germ, and there you go, problem solved. I mean, that is the way that this has always happened in the past. Yeah, the whole thing with trust the science and everything. It's like, what science? Because science has told us that in the past, when you have things like this come through, if you just let nature do its work, you're going to get to the other side of it. With people, that's a little rough. You don't want to say, well, we're going to let this germ come through and we're not going to try to protect anyone because, eventually we'll kill off all the weak humans, and, it's too bad for grandma, but, all the weak humans will die, and then, we'll just leave the strong ones. I can see the emotional argument against that. Maybe there's not a logical argument against that, but I can understand the emotional argument against that. But for the idea of, for chickens, and don't get me wrong, I have an emotional attachment to our chickens. They're kind of our pets. They've got names, as you know. So I'd be very sad if they died, but this is how nature works, where the weak perish, the strong survive, and evolution does its thing. If you believe in evolution, you should probably believe in the idea of evolution, where, a germ comes out and nature will adapt to it. Trust the science, as they say. So, at some point that's going to happen, and I want to have our flock be large enough so that, we don't lose all of our males or something like that. Now, that said, if that happens, we've got a neighbor over there that's got chickens, we've got a neighbor over there that's got chickens, we've got a neighbor over there that's got chickens, we've got another neighbor down there that's got chickens. It would be very unlikely that all the females or all the males and all these different flocks would all die at the same time. So, you could always go to your community, and community is very important for everything that we talk about here on this channel. But, still, you'd like to be a macrocosm and try to make it so you don't have to, I wish I had my hat. I was wearing a hat all day. I'd love to take my hat off and be, you go to your neighbor's house and he's like, excuse me, sir, could I please have some of your chickens or some of your eggs or whatever? I don't want to be in the position where I have to do that. If I did need to do that, I'm sure the neighbors would be very happy to accommodate and happy to help. I know if someone came to me and they wanted some chickens, I'd be very happy. I'd say, hey, here are the last eggs that just got hatched. Here's a dozen of them. Good luck. We'd all love to help each other, but if you can avoid putting yourself in that situation, that's a good thing. I mean, just as common practice, try to be as self-sufficient as you can. So that's a lot of chit-chat about digging a foundation, but that's what this thing is all for. I'm not putting in a foundation because I like concrete and I like rocks and I like swinging this goddamn thing. We're putting in the foundation so we can achieve all of these kind of upper level things that I'm talking about in this video. The idea of standing on your own, having resiliency, having self-sufficiency, trusting the science of evolution, and the resilience of genes, in this constant struggle that we have going on the skin, on the surface of this planet. So the nuts and bolts of how to do all this stuff is concrete and rock and shovels and pickaxes, but what we're achieving, what we're aiming for, what we're hopefully achieving, is that kind of resiliency that life has on this planet. And you get it by swinging pickaxes and pulling out clods of dirt with shovels. That's it. Thanks for watching. Hey YouTube preppers, if you'd like to see the naive version of myself from a year ago building that first chicken coop, here's a video link that you can click on right over there. In the video I talk a lot about my sense of what I'm building, what I'm trying to achieve, and even at that time my uncertainty as to whether or not it's going to work.